G'day Gear Junkies, Jason here. A couple of months ago, I demoed the new Marshall 1959 Super Lead pedal. Now, I was so impressed with this pedal and had so much fun with it that I actually went out and bought myself a little plexi combo, which I probably need to do a demo of at some stage. But in the comments for that video, I said that if you wanted me to get a hold of and demo any of the other pedals from this series, to let me know in the comments, which you did. Now, I was hoping you'd say the JCM800 because that's the one I actually wanted to get a hold of, but overwhelmingly the most popular answer was the JCM800. So I listened, I got a hold of one, so here we go. But before I begin, if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. And if you want to support this channel, you can go to the Middle Aged Gear Junkie store and purchase some merchandise, or you could support me through Patreon, where I'm uploading additional content and previews to my upcoming videos. Thanks for the support. I'm using the same amp and speakers that I used for the 1959 Super Lead pedal demo, which is the orange terraced amp, and that's running into a box that's got two Celestion D12T speakers, which are kind of like a modified greenback. Here's my clean sound. I'm playing my P90 loaded Les Paul at the moment. I will change guitars a couple of times. I'm going to use the same clean sound throughout this demo. So here's the JCM800 pedal. All right, so it needs a bit of a volume adjustment. Now, firstly, I want to talk about the sensitivity control here. This is unique to this pedal. On the JCM800 amplifiers, they had two inputs. They had a high sensitivity and a low sensitivity input. So basically, if you wanted to back off the amount of distortion this amplifier was putting out, you would go into the low sensitivity input. And that can be simulated on this pedal by turning the sensitivity all the way to the left. As I turn the sensitivity down, I feel I have to turn the volume up to compensate for that. So it gives you a kind of warm, almost sort of fat sound by having low sensitivity and having the gain down. Now, most people didn't use this amplifier for that application, although there is one example of somebody who used to do that. Now, what people would normally do is go into the high sensitivity output. And you can hear there, it went up in volume, but it's also become a bit more present and a bit more gainy. So when I turn up the gain all the way now, I'll have more gain than I would have had with the sensitivity down. And that's how that works. With the gain and the sensitivity right up, it's a very harmonically rich and full sounding distortion. But what was considered a high gain amplifier when it came out, it might actually surprise you that it doesn't have as much gain as you might expect, especially if you're comparing it to, say, a 5150, which would come out about 10 years after this amplifier. The only major guitarist I can think of who used to just use the distortion tone from his amplifier while using a JCM800 was Tom Morello. learned about the JCM800 is the guys that used to use it back in the day would use it as their bass tone and then they would modify it. So you could modify it in many different ways. You could use a distortion pedal with it, or you could use an EQ. Most guys, however, used to use overdrive pedals. So for example, if I was playing something that had a lot of picking, especially a lot of fast picking, it's a little bit dull sounding. But if I click on a Marshall blues breaker in front of it, the blues breaker has a really focused upper mid frequency that brings out pick attack, and it would make that sound a lot more clear. And this makes playing things like, for example, Iron Maiden so much tastier. But by far the most popular tone shaping tool in this period was the Ibanez Tube Screamer. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you use, they all work fairly similarly. You can use it to just boost the output of the guitar signal just to make it hotter, hitting the amplifier and make the amplifier work harder. Or you could wind in some of its gain, which creates a bit more saturation but also compression. But just by having it on, it also shapes your tone. So it rolls off some of the upper frequencies just to make it a bit more sort of pleasant, particularly when you're playing up high. And it also rolls off a bit of excess bottom end just to make your tone a little bit clearer. It also pushes mid-range, and this made it perfect for playing a lot of lines, particularly on the middle strings, which became really popular in the 80s thanks to tones like this. So this is without the Tube Screamer. And you can use a tone like that to replicate any number of different artists that use that kind of tone. Someone like, say, Mick Mars from Motley Crue. Kirk Hammett of Metallica was also a massive fan of the JCM800 paired with the Tube Screamer. Both Zakk Wylde and Richie Sambora were fans of using the JCM800 with the Boss SD1. This pedal also sounds really good with wah. By using the Tube Screamer or the Blues Breaker or them both together with the JCM800 pedal, it creates some really fantastic sizzling lead guitar sounds. You just need a bit of reverb and delay and away you go. Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins talked about how he used to use a JCM800 early in his career, but he would go into the low sensitivity input and then smash the front of the amplifier with an op-amp Big Muff. Now, I don't have an op-amp Big Muff, but I do have a Big Muff Pi, so I'm going to try to simulate this sound by turning the sensitivity right down on the pedal and then clicking on the Big Muff Pi. Now, turning the sensitivity right down does make it a lot softer, so I'm going to have to adjust the volume control. Like any drive pedal, this will sound different depending on the amplifier and speakers that it's running through. So like with the 59 Super Lead video, I'm going to play an example now. It's the same example, same settings on the pedal, same guitar, same mics, but I'm going to run through a bunch of different amplifiers. I'm going to go through my Fender Deluxe Reverb, my Messenger Rectifier solo head on the clean channel. I'm going to set up my Plexi with a clean tone and also through the Terrastamp. The JCM800 amplifier was originally released in 1980. The three letters JCM are Jim Marshall's initials, while 800, a lot of people think that it's in reference to the decade of the 80s. In fact, it was just the number on his number plate. Now, this was a very important amplifier when it came to the development of high gain amplifiers. It was probably one of the first, if not the first, mass-produced high gain amplifiers. The JCM800 was a single channel master volume amplifier. Now, what that means is, well, prior to the JCM800, if you were using an old Marshall Plexi, to get it to overdrive, you had to turn the gain right up with no master volume to attenuate the volume. So it was incredibly loud. The master volume allows you to turn the gain on full and then attenuate the overall volume coming out of it using the master volume. Like the Marshall Plexis before it, there were several different versions of the JCM800. There was a 50 watt version, a 100 watt version. There were signature versions like the Kerry King model, and they were also very regularly modified to get more gain. In the early 80s, there weren't many options for a high gain amplifier, and the JCM800, I think, was probably the easiest one to get your hands on, which is probably why it was so successful. But as I explained, it's not got quite as much gain as you might expect. In fact, I know that a lot of people are actually disappointed when they play one for the first time because they're thinking, you know, Kerry King, Slayer, or Kirk Hammett, and they just don't have that amount of gain that you would expect. Because most of these guys would modify the tone using an overdrive or a distortion or something like that. I really loved running this with the Tube Screamer and particularly the Boss SD1. That's when I thought that this sound was at its best. It really tightened it up, focused the sound a bit, and really it was so much fun to play. I was playing this thing for hours off camera. So far, I am very impressed with this series of Marshall pedals. I think they sound great, they look really good, and they're built like a tank. My arm's getting sore just holding this thing up because it's really, really heavy. So I think it's the second control on each pedal that has something unique about it. So on the 59, it has the high treble channel gain control. On this one, we've got the sensitivity. It's really cool that you can, it's not just high or low. They could have just put a switch there for high or low sensitivity, but by giving it a pot, you can really dial in the amount of sensitivity that you want. I think for the JCM800 pedal, instead of that, it's a contour control, which was something that was unique to that amplifier. So please let me know in the comments what you think of this pedal. This one was hard to get my hands on. I mean, they'd sold out. I had to wait something like 6 weeks after I purchased it because there was just none in the country. So they must be selling. And do you think you could just make do with something like, say, a JHS Angry Charlie? In my opinion, I think that the Angry Charlie's actually got more gain than this guy, even though they're based on the same amplifier. And also, let me know, what are your favorite songs and albums that used a JCM800? I'd be really interested to know. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you want to support this channel, you can go to the Middle Age Gear Junkie store and purchase some merchandise, or you can also support me through Patreon, where I'm uploading additional content. Other than that, my name is Jason. Have a wonderful day. See you later.